Hi, and welcome back to the Working Class History podcast. As you may know, we don't get any sort of funding from any wealthy benefactors, corporations, governments, or political parties. Our work is funded by you, our listeners and readers, on Patreon. In return, our supporters on Patreon get access to exclusive content and benefits, like ad-free episodes, bonus podcast episodes, and a couple of exclusive discussion podcast series, Fireside chats, and radical reads. So here is a little preview of our latest episode for our patrons. You can join us, help support our work, and listen to the whole thing today at patreon.com/workingclasshistory. Link in the show notes.
At Arizona State University, we made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
You also have a bunch of international wings of the project. Ade, you're part of the Persian language wing. Maybe you could talk about the work that you all do, and also what other languages is the project available in, and how are you organized? How is the project organized in across the world?
Well, for the part we do the Persian language. We provide it in Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. Twitter, both are censored in Iran, and so people usually use proxy, but most of the people have the proxy, so they can have access to it. And when we wanted to start it, we were actually thinking about how we can work in group. So there were, first of all, I have to say that our group consists of usually around 7 people, but it sometimes varies from 10 to 4. Some of us, mostly inspired by worker cooperatives of Richard Wolff. And some of us also were inspired and influenced by work of atomists Antonio Negri and Michael Hart works of assembly, their concept, which they're saying that basically this network, any sort of network, would also in the 21st century, in the neoliberalism era, need to carry the material reproduction of themselves as well. So that was the aim. The form it was basically our first priority, and one of our friends introduced us. We thought that it would be a great idea to adopt it because it has some sort of continuity, and we thought that it would be equally spread the division of labor, that daily we have to do it, one of us, and so it would be a good practice for us to work on it and to do the things spontaneously without any middleman in between or coordinator. And we also developed a bot that would just call us out and do the coordination a bit. Yeah, well, this is something which is always is still in progress, and there is always these ups and downs in it. But I personally, I'm actually proud of it. And in our group, so one of the very important thing about posting or publishing a post is that you need to think about the narrative. We do it in a way that so it doesn't really matter. Like, I really don't know exactly about the stance of my fellow members. We post something in our group, and then we send it out. We publish it if we all agree on it. So, and this is something that I'm really glad about this. But we haven't really reached our aims yet. But yeah, this is the idea, that how we come about working class history.
John, how did you go from, as the host of a relatively unpopular, but in my opinion, quite good podcast? It's not easy to build a base of listeners online or a base of followers around especially serious political history that's global, right? A lot of people want cynicism, they want sarcasm, they want to be reminded that the world is shit and everything's fucked. they don't want, usually, there's not a lot of young lefties out there who are trying to get inspired when I was younger, at least. Maybe that's changed as the world has shifted in recent years. But how did you go from taking this idea? I don't know if it started with the idea of posting a daily, this day in history for the radical left, but how did you scale that to where you now have 500,000 followers and people, there's little collectives around the world who are trying to participate?
It's really interesting for me to hear as well and learn more about how they organize. But the English language pages are a collective effort, so I can't take credit for all that. But essentially, a while ago, some of us had the idea of posting anniversaries would be a thing that might go viral on social media and might prove quite popular, and then that might be quite a good way of essentially propagating radical ideas and trying to encourage people to organize and get active in stuff and learn from past struggles and things like that. And that basically was just more successful than we anticipated. And so as more and more people started kind of following, we started then thinking about, well, what more could we do with it? And so we started a Patreon where some people started to essentially support us financially. And this enabled some of us to start taking time off from our day jobs to do more in-depth work, which is how we were able to start a podcast and cover the costs associated with various online platforms, which kind of mount up, social media tools and things like that. So essentially it was support from our readers on Patreon that enabled us to take that step. And because we did think that a podcast talking to people who were involved in struggles in the past primarily, and some historians as well, to try and tell those stories and learn from those experiences, was something which wasn't being, we thought there was a bit of a gap for that, at least in terms of the international scope that WCH has and the perspective that WCH has focused on ordinary people and not like political parties or governments.
Can I ask another question about that perspective? Because one of the, as a songwriter, I've always been a huge fan of the 2 to 3 minute history of something, the ballad, maybe 6 minutes is more accurate, but you guys do a really, really good job of compressing really big stories into a couple of paragraphs that people are actually going to read. So, one of my goals as a songwriter is, can I tell you enough about a subject that makes you want to learn more about it without giving you, a 15-minute long song that just goes on and on and on? That's an art. It's very, very hard. I don't always do it correctly, but you guys do a really, really good job of that. And I'm interested to know if that was something, from the get-go that you all decided would be a more digestible way to propagate these stories. Was there conversations about the length of posts? Because another thing you do that ties into that is you don't necessarily propagate the way, like think of a kind of classical left party sort of narrative where you're telling people at the end what to think about it. You kind of leave it open to the reader to interpret what the story means, but you tell it in a way that makes it hard to not sympathize with the subjects of the story.
Oh, well, thanks. I mean, with the English language stuff, yeah, I mean, we did decide that in terms of style, we wanted to be succinct and we wanted to speak clearly without using specialist terminology where we can avoid it, or explaining any specialist terms that we use. And yeah, and we just had a genuine dislike for so much lefty history telling, which you get trot groups or whatever, and they have history articles in their papers or whatever, and they typically end. And that's why, and this failed because they failed to have the correct revolutionary leadership. And so we are that correct revolutionary leadership. So if you join us, it will all be good next time. And then on the other side of that, you've got like anarchists or anarcho-syndicalists who do the same thing, and they end it with, and this is why you should be an anarcho-syndicalist, and which, if people want to do that, that's fine, but that's not really how we wanted to go about things. And with the length, we did actually, when we started, the posts were a lot shorter for the most part, but we kind of discovered that, to our surprise, because especially so much social media, especially Instagram, is such a visual medium, that people seem to really prefer ones where we go into more detail. So over the past couple of years, we've been rewriting a lot of stuff to give more detail and to give more background, because the posts where we give more context and do things like, try and include quotes from participants and things do prove more popular. So
Interesting.
we are trying to add more depth there, but you're restricted by the character limit.
Of course.
So you can't go over 2,000 characters, including spaces. So that's the limit set by the format.
Don't they know that history has no character limit? Ade, what about in the Farsi language version of working class history? What are the main projects that you do? Do you have an Instagram as well? Do you focus on, you said earlier a few of the things, including Telegram.
Basically, as John also mentioned, there's a character limit, especially in Twitter. And I think our most emphasis is in Telegram because it's very popular in Iran. And Telegram is basically it do the job of like WhatsApp as well. So people really use it for their daily, and they really have interaction with it. At the beginning, it was a little, but it slowly grow to be more. There is also this limit, but if I'm not mistaken, the limit of Telegram is less than the other platforms. Especially our domestic, local stories are longer than the more international ones.
And you focus on the same kind of stuff, though.
Well, so our principle, like how we gonna choose, we prefer those who are about movement than like birthday or death date of a scholar or activist. And if it is about movement, those who are more about the victory, who were successful, than those who like failed. We wanted to have this theme as a like a honorable or pride sort of theme, not to make audience feel pity, but to encourage them and
Right.
give them responsibility as well. Yeah.
That brings us to the end of this episode preview. Hope you enjoyed it. To listen to the full thing and help support our work researching and promoting people's history, join us today on Patreon at patreon.com/workingclasshistory. That's patreon.com/workingclasshistory. Link in the show notes. Catch you next time.